Welcome to my channel, SkyDiplomat Leadership Training. What's that for? It's for flight attendants, all brands. Why? Well, the Department of Transportation, they came out recently with their civility campaign. When I heard that word, I went, woo, cool. Because I, for 30 years, had my own international business protocol and etiquette company where I trained CEOs able to interact and do business with the foreign client. And also, I was a flight attendant, shy of 20 years. So I felt that I have real experience, real knowledge of what it's like to be a flight attendant on the ground and knowing what's going on with the generations. That's the key. The word is generations. That's the issue. So stay tuned, get your pen and paper, because what I have put together, let me show you up front. Of course, it's all backwards, but I put together a chart based upon my research as far as what is trained with your major brands when it comes to dealing with the unruly passenger, as far as what they do, and then the approach through my leadership training, the SkyDiplomat, because there is a major difference. The short version is what is taught today between eye contact, being sincere, being in the presence, acknowledging the passenger, they have an issue, repeating it back to them, and trying to find a conclusion for it, a solution. All works great, right? It sounds good on paper, and that's basically the training. But that is a baby boomer manual. That is something, and that interaction, those skills training works for my generation, but it's not necessarily always going to be successful when you're working with different generations. That is why I got into understanding the various generations, and the light finally went off in my head. I went, yep, those training manuals just need to be tweaked. And that's the whole purpose of this particular series. I get into all the tweakness. I get into all the words you would use based upon the generation. But that's the issue. So if you really want to learn some things of what's going on and where the differences are and what would be key for airlines to really, really seriously think about it in their rewriting of their training manuals, then get your pen and paper and away we go. All right, so let's kind of get into the weeds here. The way the training is traditional with most airline brands today are the basic diffusing angry passengers 101. I have read these training modules. Basically, it's the same things that I learned, but I think they actually are taking from the initial conflict resolution manuals that were written by flight attendants or by psychologists maybe years ago who were baby boomers. It's the same response. You have an angry customer, it's an emotion, what you need to do, go and listen to them, eye contact, be in the presence, repeat to them, do I hear you right? Is this the issue? Let's see if I can figure out, let's just find a solution for it. That does immediately cause them to calm down. I get it. But that's not the complete picture here. The complete picture here is that these trainings need to be further fine-tuned, but seen through the prism of a generation. We have 3 more generations that are very similar, being that they come from an upbringing of just being an individual. It's all about me. I'm entitled. Why? Because they came with an iPhone. They came with an iPad. They weren't like my generation, out in the woods and playing with the kids and all that. We didn't have iPads. We didn't even have televisions when I was a little girl. So you see, we were more of a collective spirit versus an individual spirit. It's all about myself. They don't bond like the baby boomer generation has. So the current brands need to update their training and scenarios and practice. But also what's important is that the flight attendants themselves have to be encouraged and incentivized that they themselves will keep a journal. And of course they won't note it with every trip, but those trips that there were some kind of altercations, being very minor, they never rose to a level, but they themselves can pick up what's going on. In other words, they need to put attention on themselves of how their interaction are with the customers. What that will do, that will stop flight attendants from just basically thinking, I just have to give out the mail and I'll go in the back and get out my book and read it. No, they need to, for the entire time that they're on that airplane, that cabin is their company. If they know that this is your company, how it performs, our profit and loss is going to be dependent upon you. If they are empowered, understanding that this is what their job is all about, they will get up and go through to be sure everyone's all right. They will anticipate, and that's another key word. They will anticipate through their situational awareness. They will intuitively pick up things that may or may not, or could not blow up and get out of hand. And of course, the big bottom line is all anger is based on fear. Fear is an emotion. As soon as you can change the thread in the brain from analyzing things through the microscope of fear and emotion and switch it into a logic and analysis, which is through explaining the why. These generations want to know why we had to do this. Why are we delayed? Why is this happening? When you bring them into the picture of understanding, the logic takes over and they're calm. So this is kind of a blueprint of the puzzles, pieces that need to be put together. And you as brand CEOs and management, you need to empower your staff. You need not only the agents, but also the flight crew. You need to empower the flight attendants that this is your company. This is your oasis. You need to inform your customers by explaining the whys of things that may be happening. You need to anticipate outbreaks that could or could not happen. This is your territory. Rather than they just do a check mark, give them their food and back in the galley and pick out a book and they just hope the time goes by fast. Because that in reality is kind of the way it is. You need to let them feel inclusive in your company. Once that happens, once they start keeping a journal and are learning how to even better improve their own interaction with their customers and their own personal experience, just even that little habit, can you imagine how that's going to improve their interaction with the customer? When you have happy crews, you have loyalty. When you have happy crews, you have happy passengers. Happy passengers are also loyal to your brand. So from my perspective, I see that this whole issue of the unruly passenger directly points to an emotion, directly points to not understanding of the why things are happening, and directly points to the flight crew themselves, not themselves taking proactive initiatives to want to anticipate issues by also interacting with customers in a positive manner prior to anything happening. So I hope this gives you an overview, and stay tuned as we go down this wonderful path together. As I get into the weeds, as I showed you my chart, comparing the traditional training versus my diplomatic training, of this small tweaking in the training itself and scenarios and practice will lead to a very, very successful company, but more importantly, to very successful passengers, very happy passengers who will get to their destination safe and sound, which is what